This is the story of Eleanor Vance, a black woman who built a billion-dollar empire from nothing, then secretly abandoned her power to become a low-wage janitor, all to expose how her own company was actively destroying people who looked just like her. The glass and steel Vance Global Tower in downtown Chicago was a monument to wealth, yet, on that Monday morning, power was exercised through a cold, cruel act of casual negligence. Eleanor Vance, 79 years old, was the company's founder. She was now kneeling on the floor in a ragged gray uniform. She was utterly invisible. The morning silence was ruptured by a clumsy splatter. Cold, homogenized whole milk struck her face, soaking her hair and the shoulder of her uniform. "Oh, damn it, sorry. Slipped on that thing." Nathan Miller, a self-satisfied planning manager in an aggressively loud tie, stood above her, looking down. He tossed the empty carton into the bin, failing to even glance at her. "Seriously, Miller, a whole carton?" A young intern giggled, engrossed in her smartphone. Nathan shrugged, meticulously wiping his expensive suit sleeve. "It is fine, right? That is what the cleaning crew is for." The old woman's job description probably says, "Mop up spilled drinks and take silent abuse." It is not like she is on deadline. He gave a short, entitled corporate laugh, leaning into the cruel American concept of individual liability. "Watch out, lady, that floor is slick now. Trip and fall? That is on you." He then added, "Seriously, why are you cleaning here right now? You are in the way." The cold milk soaked into the thin fabric, a quiet fury rising in the heart of the black woman who had once signed Nathan's predecessor's paychecks. She remained silent, not uttering a word. Eleanor Vance slowly sank to her knees and methodically began wiping the spill. Not a single person offered help. Not one person paused. A muffled click from a smartphone echoed from down the hall. Someone was documenting the janitor's humiliation. Where did this company lose its moral compass? The question was a devastating tremor in her heart. 40 years. She had entrusted the business to her son Kenneth, an intelligent man with an MBA. But the metrics were clean, profits were up, yet her founder's intuition was screaming. Something was rotting beneath the surface. This was why she was here. She shed her name and title, trading the corner office for this uniform, believing that only from this lowest, most invisible vantage point could she diagnose the cancer eating away at her company's soul. The first thing she saw was cold milk, and the brutal, classist indifference that accompanied it. The silence of the recent humiliation was broken by a new sound, the sharp, expensive click-clack of custom leather shoes on the marble floor. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. Eleanor kept her head down, her hand slowly moving the dirty rag, working close to the end of the long corridor. A man approached, impeccably tailored in a navy suit, his dark hair flawlessly styled. This was Kenneth Vance, the president and chief executive officer, the successor. He commanded attention, yet his gaze was locked entirely on the glowing screen of his smartphone as he walked. For a suspended moment, as Kenneth passed the hunched figure on the floor, their eyes intersected or seemed to. There was no flicker of recognition, no acknowledgement of her existence, only the clinical, fleeting awareness one gives an inanimate obstacle. Kenneth's eyes immediately returned to his screen, and he walked past without altering his stride or uttering a single word. Eleanor slowly stopped her motion. Her only son, her own flesh and blood, had just walked right through the mother who birthed him and the founder who gave him this empire. She knew he was not a cruel man. He was simply a man blinded by the worship of efficiency. "Your eyes used to be kinder, my son," she thought, the silent accusation a deep maternal ache. Kenneth had become addicted to the pristine cleanliness of spreadsheets. He saw data, not people. He managed profit, never the human cost. This company, which she had founded on the principle that every worker, from the assembly line to the boardroom, mattered, was now run by her own son, who had lost the capacity to see people. Ellie rose slowly, her eyes tracking the retreating back of the chief executive officer. Her mission was no longer about corporate audits or balance sheets. It was about saving her son from the spiritual bankruptcy of his own ambition. She knew the company was heading toward a crisis it could not fix with a spreadsheet. Eleanor dropped the rag, a cold determination hardening her spine. She had to venture deeper into the trenches to find the truth, because the next victim she witnessed would determine whether Vance Global deserved a second chance or if it was already too late for salvation. Later that day, Eleanor was pushing her cleaning cart when a sharp, raised voice echoed down the hall. "How many times do I have to tell you? This is not the file I asked for." Eleanor paused, recognizing the sound of corporate bullying she now knew too well. The incident occurred near the central copy machine, where a young woman stood, shoulders unnaturally stiff, head bowed in submission. The man shouting was a middle-aged manager, his tone dripping with contempt. "A temp like you should stick to what you are told," he sneered, using the term temp like a racial slur or a contagion. "I am so sorry, sir, but the instructions specified this content," the woman began to explain. "Do not make excuses. That is why you will always be contract labor." The word struck her like a physical blow. The young woman's shoulders visibly trembled, the word temp piercing her chest like a branding iron. Eleanor slowly moved closer, observing the exchange. The woman looked to be in her early 20s, dressed simply but cleanly in a beige cardigan and black slacks, with no makeup. She embodied the ethos of the modern precarious worker, blending in, not causing trouble, trying desperately to survive. After the manager stormed off, the young woman remained standing there, motionless. Her hands, clasped tightly in front of her, were shaking. Eleanor approached her slowly. The young woman looked up with a start. Her eyes were slightly red, but she was not crying, or perhaps she could not afford to cry. "Are you all right, dear?" Eleanor asked softly. The woman shook her head quickly. "Excuse me, ma'am," the young woman whispered, her voice fragile. "We are instructed not to talk to non-employees. Please do not involve yourself." Fear and exhaustion were visible in her eyes. Eleanor nodded, understanding the delicate position the young worker was in. She paused, letting the silence settle, then quietly posed the essential question. "Why do you stay here enduring this treatment?" A faint, self-deprecating smile touched the woman's lips. "I have no parents, ma'am. My grandmother raised me, and she is elderly and now bedridden. I had to start working right after high school. Contract, temp, anything to make money." Her voice broke, but she forced herself to continue. "I need the security of a permanent position. I believe that if I stayed here, at Vance Global, someday I could make things easier for my grandmother." Eleanor's heart tightened painfully. This young woman was alone, unprotected, yet she fought every day to protect the one person she had left. "May I know your name, dear?" "It is Maya. Maya Reed. Maya Reed. Would you join me for lunch sometime? I only know the cheap cafeteria special, but it is better than nothing." Maya looked surprised, then a small, bright smile appeared, a brief flash of hope in the sterile hallway. "Yes, I would love that." That smile, Eleanor realized, was achingly reminiscent of her own youthful determination decades ago. Eleanor pressed a hand to her chest. This child must not be broken. It was a quiet declaration of war. The company had tried to erase her. Now, Eleanor knew who her first ally and her deepest motivation would be. That night, the only sounds echoing in the deserted Vance Global headquarters were the rapid click-click-click of a keyboard, followed by the frustrated delete-delete-delete. Tucked away in a dusty corner of the temporary workers section, Maya Reed was hunched over an old computer. Her face was illuminated by the monitor's glow. She was typing carefully, erasing, and typing again, pouring every ounce of concentration into the document on her screen. The clock on the wall read well past 8 o'clock post-meridian. Eleanor, having finished collecting the last waste bin from the executive conference rooms, noticed the single light emanating from Maya's area. She approached quietly, peering through the slight opening in the cubicle partition. The screen displayed the final page of a detailed proposal. What Eleanor saw was immediately impressive. The color coding on the graphs, the depth of the supporting data, the structuring of the diagrams, the meticulous analysis of target user trends. This was not the amateur work of a typical temp. It was a document of genuine value, clearly communicating a sophisticated strategy to anyone with the acumen to appreciate it. Eleanor cleared her throat, causing Maya to jump to her feet in surprise. "I am sorry. I forgot to lock up when I finished," Maya stammered, fearing reprimand. "I am not angry, dear," Eleanor said gently. "Did you create this, all by yourself?" Yes, ma'am. I heard temps were sometimes given a chance to submit ideas. I know it probably will not be approved, but Maya's voice trailed off in self-doubt. This will pass, Eleanor stated with quiet certainty. The content is solid, and more importantly, it has the power to communicate. It is compelling. Maya's eyes welled up slightly, the unexpected validation hitting her hard. No one has ever said that to me before. Eleanor simply nodded, her expression serious. She knew, then and there, this young woman was trustworthy. Maya's talent, her dedication, and her desperate need for security were powerful motivators, but they were about to clash violently with the entrenched corruption above them. Ellie knew she could not stand by and watch this essential good part of the company, this earnest young black woman, be crushed by the very rot she had come to expose. The cafeteria lunch they planned was no longer just a meal. It was now the first clandestine meeting of two allies in a war against a corporate culture that hated brilliance it could not control. The very next day, immediately following the brief morning meeting, Maya held her carefully bound proposal and knocked on the conference room door. Inside sat Rick Dalton, the manager of Sales Team 2, and the man who had verbally abused her the day before. Yes? What is it? A temp wants to submit a proposal? Dalton frowned, reluctantly taking the file. He flipped through the pages, a review process that lasted barely 5 seconds. Huh, I see, Dalton muttered. The next sound was a sickening reap. Without hesitation, Dalton tore Maya's comprehensive document completely in half. This is garbage. Zero value, he declared, his voice full of contempt. Overstated numbers. Pure theoretical nonsense. But I gathered actual data from the field, sir, Maya stammered, her voice trembling with disbelief and pain. Shut up. Temps are supposed to do what they are told, not offer proposals. You are being audacious. Who authorized this? Dalton's eyes darted around the room. Several employees present instantly looked away, avoiding eye contact. Some stared at their phones, others busied themselves shuffling papers. Maya was utterly isolated. But then Dalton smiled, a wide, triumphant grin, and pulled a different document from his folder. Now, this is different. Look at this. He held up a flimsy, 2-page sheet of paper, simple and elegant, excellent work. The document was the proposal submitted by Rick Dalton Jr., the incompetent, entitled son of the Vice President of Sales. It contained almost no data, just vague, high-level ideas, relying entirely on his lineage. Wow, that is great, Wataru, one employee chimed in, using the son's privileged nickname. Pure genius. No one acknowledged Maya's efforts or her detailed work. They simply shifted their attention to the executive's son. From the deep shadow cast by her cleaning cart near the doorway, Eleanor Vance watched the entire sickening display, her hand clenched tightly around the handle of her mop. The injustice was staggering, the world shown to be utterly shallow. Maya collected the ripped pieces of paper from the floor, her voice barely a whisper. My effort was simply not good enough. I will try harder. Her words were heavy with self-blame, cutting deeper into Eleanor's heart than any insult. Do not break, Maya. I will ensure your effort is not wasted, Eleanor silently swore, her eyes burning with a renewed, fierce resolve. She pushed her cart away, knowing she could not wait any longer. The company had chosen nepotism over merit. Eleanor now knew that the fight must escalate immediately from observation to aggressive evidence collection. Later that morning, at 11:15, Eleanor stood in the hall outside a high-level conference room, her cleaning bucket and rags her silent camouflage. A wave of nervous energy was palpable in the air. A major client was expected for a meeting. Through the barely cracked door, she heard a low, furtive voice. Peering slightly into the gap, Eleanor saw Rick Dalton, the sales manager, passing a thick paper bag to a man who looked like a high-end contractor. The bag was clearly weighted, bulging with contents. The contractor, sporting a designer belt and a gleaming watch, casually peeked inside the bag and nodded. Excellent. Please handle next month's processing as well. Eleanor froze, pretending to wring out a dirty cloth, though her hand trembled slightly. The door shut completely, but she remained rooted there for several long moments. She was certain. There was a hidden, unethical operation running beneath the polished surface of Vance Global. That afternoon, Eleanor found herself cleaning the fourth-floor office suite, specifically Rick Dalton's locked office. After confirming the hall was empty, she slipped inside. On his desk, amidst stray papers, lay a stack of expense receipts that cleaning staff were explicitly told not to touch. Eleanor gently picked up a single receipt. It read, "The Golden Lily Club, client entertainment, 8 people, 218,000 United States dollars. Beneath it was a taxi receipt for 21,000 United States dollars logged at 3 o'clock ante-meridian. All the receipts bore the corporate seal, rubber-stamped as entertainment expense. Eleanor pulled out her discreet burner phone. She carefully photographed the stack, the high-end nightclub tabs, the late-night taxi fares, gifts and bouquets, all expenses that screamed of inappropriate use of company funds. This was not fueled by anger or excitement, but cold, professional calculation. She was an auditor with a mop. She whispered to herself, "You can hide the numbers, but you cannot hide the atmosphere and the stench of corruption." Suddenly, footsteps approached rapidly in the hall. "Wait, did I forget to lock up?" Dalton's voice was close. Eleanor instinctively slipped the phone into her pocket, replaced the receipt exactly as found, and spun around, pretending to tie the top of a full garbage bag. She knew she was cornered, and the next few seconds would determine whether her secret mission would continue or end right here, exposed and discredited. The doorknob rattled, and the office door swung open. Rick Dalton's face appeared, startled. "What the— Oh, it is just you." Eleanor gave a silent, brief nod of deference. She started to lift her bucket, signaling she was leaving. "Hold up, wait a minute." Dalton's voice stopped her dead. Her heart momentarily seized, but her expression remained neutral. Dalton's eyes scanned her back, then flicked to his desk. "You just came in here, did you not? You did not touch anything on my desk, did you?" Eleanor slowly turned, her small voice steady. "The wastebin was full, sir. I only removed the garbage. Excuse me." Dalton squinted at her, suspicion lingering, but eventually he snorted. "Fine, just make sure you knock when I am in here, next time." "Understood, sir." Eleanor bowed deeply and swiftly walked out. The only sound was the faint squeak of her cartwheels, betraying her intense tension. The water in her bucket felt oddly lukewarm, mirroring the corrupt atmosphere of the company itself. She emptied the bucket and refilled it with fresh, cold water. Her job was to clean the real dirt of this corporation, not just the surfaces. Meanwhile, the sales department was in chaos. Dalton Jr., the vice president's son, was standing with a flawed delivery document in hand, shouting, "Who circulated this file to the client? Are you kidding me with these numbers?" The team immediately looked away. Dalton Jr.'s status was untouchable, thanks to his father's protection. Who did this? Who put out the wrong data? His eyes landed on Maya Reed, who was quietly organizing documents in the corner. "Hey you, Maya, you copied the documents yesterday, did you not?" "She did it," Dalton Jr. declared, pointing directly at the temp worker. "This woman gave the wrong file to the client." Eleanor, pushing her cart nearby, realized the trap was fully sprung, and this was no longer a simple mistake, but a calculated, brutal framing of the vulnerable. Maya's eyes went wide with shock. "Excuse me, I was given no such instruction to send this file. I certainly did not circulate it." "Do not make excuses." Dalton Jr. slammed his fist onto a nearby desk, startling Maya. "Are you denying it, or are you going to apologize and take responsibility?" Just then, Rick Dalton, the sales manager, appeared, his voice quiet but carrying strange authority. "Miss Reed, you are a contract worker. Do you think it is wise to argue so strongly against your superiors?" His tone became menacing. "If you are fired, where will you go next? Who will hire a high school graduate with no certifications, especially one caring for an ailing, bedridden grandmother?" Dalton hit her with the ultimate emotional blackmail. Maya's face went white. At the mention of her grandmother, her knees visibly trembled. No one in the office spoke up. No one intervened. The silence suggested this kind of coercion was standard practice. From the shadow of the copy machine, Eleanor Vance stood still, her phone held discreetly at her side. The red light of the recording application was silently blinking. "This is enough," Eleanor thought, her hands perfectly steady. Her ears missed nothing. Maya finally surrendered, her voice a defeated whisper. "I understand. I apologize." "Excellent," Dalton Sr. said, nodding with satisfaction. He patted his son on the shoulder, and they walked away victorious. Maya remained alone, picking up scattered papers, looking like a phantom nobody bothered to see. Eleanor silently stopped the recording. She had the proof of corruption, but now she had undeniable evidence of vicious, emotional abuse, and she knew she would not remain silent this time. The scene in the glass-walled conference room was one of aggressive confrontation. The three male managers, Dalton Sr., Dalton Jr., and the planning manager, Miller, were cornering Maya again, escalating the fabricated mistake. Eleanor, returning from emptying her mop bucket, saw Maya's face through the glass. She was clearly on the verge of tears. Without hesitation, Eleanor pushed the conference room door open. "Wait a moment, please." The air instantly froze. "Who the hell is that? Get out, old woman. This is an employee meeting," Rick Dalton snarled, his face contorted in annoyance. "On what grounds are you accusing her?" Eleanor challenged, her voice low but steady. "You are simply using your position to bully and blame someone without evidence." Dalton's irritation immediately flared into rage. "That is enough, you disruptive cleaning woman. Get out, you are fired." A moment of stunned silence followed, punctuated by a few stifled giggles from the employees nearby. Maya looked down, horrified, but Eleanor met the manager's gaze unflinchingly. "I understand." "Then I gratefully accept that termination," Eleanor stated, her voice holding an unexpected, profound weight. No one grasped the meaning of her words. Without another word or change of expression, Eleanor pulled out her burner phone and calmly walked to the quiet window overlooking the city. She scrolled through her contacts, stopping at a single important name. With zero hesitation, she pressed the call button. After one ring, the party answered, and Eleanor spoke a single, measured sentence. "Please proceed. Book the auditorium as scheduled." There was a brief, acknowledging pause before the voice on the other end responded, confirming the instruction. Eleanor ended the call, slipping the phone back into her uniform pocket. The preparations were complete. As she passed the conference room, she heard the men laughing again. That old hag was creepy anyway. Good she is finally fired. Eleanor did not spare them a glance, moving purposefully toward the staircase. They were celebrating her expulsion, completely oblivious that the cleaning woman was about to move mountains, or rather to bring the entire company to a screeching mandatory halt. A few hours later, a notification was broadcast company-wide. "Mandatory emergency staff meeting today at 1600 hours. All personnel must report to the Founders Memorial Auditorium." This notice, sent with an executive priority designation, was the first sign of movement. At exactly 4 o'clock post-meridian, employees filed into the large auditorium, muttering in confusion and irritation. An emergency meeting? Shutting down sales for this? Senior managers and vice presidents were also present, looking equally baffled. No one was on stage, and the screen remained blank. Who is even running this? Is the CEO announcing a new policy? Maybe layoffs? The anxious murmuring intensified. Then, the rear doors of the auditorium opened slowly. A single figure appeared and walked deliberately onto the stage. She was wearing a thin, faded gray maintenance uniform, scuffed sneakers, and her white hair was pulled back tightly. It was Eleanor Vance, the cleaning woman. The entire hall erupted in a low, confused buzz. Is that the janitor? What authority does she have to be up there? Junior staff members discreetly showed each other texts and photos, suppressing laughter. Nathan Miller, the manager who had spilled the milk, grimaced, whispering, "Is this some kind of ridiculous joke?" Rick Dalton, the sales manager, scoffed, leaning toward his son. "The crazy old hag is back. She is pathologically persistent, even after being fired." Eleanor ignored them all, moving quietly to the center podium. In her hands was a single sheet of paper, and at her feet lay a laptop and a small USB drive. She stood in silence, letting the noise wash over her. "Could we lower the screen now, please?" she said, her voice soft but unexpectedly firm. The large projector screen slowly descended. The casual laughter began to die in the room. The sheer audacity of the moment commanded silence. "Then, let us begin," Eleanor announced. But before she could continue, she took a single step back. Another figure immediately stepped onto the stage. It was the CEO, Kenneth Vance, wearing his immaculate navy suit. A wave of nervous shock swept through the crowd. Kenneth took the microphone, drew a deep breath, and spoke clearly. "I am making an immediate announcement. This woman is my mother, the founder of this company, and as of today, she is resuming her role as the executive chairwoman." The hall went completely silent, as if the air had been sucked out. The managers who had laughed just minutes before felt a wave of cold dread, realizing their petty cruelty and high crimes were about to be judged by the very woman they had ridiculed as an invisible maid. Time seemed to stop. The previously snickering employees instantly froze, their faces turning pale with shock. Rick Dalton, who had just minutes ago dismissed her as a crazy old hag, felt his stomach plummet, remembering the milk, the dismissal, and the threats. His son, Dalton Jr., who believed his family name made him untouchable, found his cocky smile completely gone, his mouth now hanging open in disbelief. Nathan Miller, the planning manager, replayed the scene of the spilled milk in his mind, the memory tasting like sour bile. Everyone who had participated in the casual cruelty sank lower in their seats. Eleanor Vance stood before them, silent. Without speaking, she walked to the monitor and inserted the small USB drive into the laptop. This was not the janitor's revenge. This was the chairwoman, Eleanor Vance, preparing for the corporate reckoning. A low, unsettling hum filled the auditorium as the lights dimmed further. "Please play the file," Eleanor instructed, her voice calm and absolute. The screen illuminated, displaying the audio file. The first sound to boom through the massive speakers was the voice of Rick Dalton Sr. "If you are fired, where will you go next? Who will hire a high school graduate, caring for an ailing, bedridden grandmother?" Next came the voice of his son. "Do not make excuses. That is why you will always be contract labor." And then the manager's sneer, "Do not argue so strongly against your superiors." The faces of the responsible managers were quickly turning sickly gray. The invisible woman had revealed herself as the ultimate witness, and the evidence of their ethical bankruptcy was now deafeningly loud. The audio cut abruptly, replaced by a low-resolution hidden camera video from the meeting room. It showed Rick Dalton Sr. tearing up Maya's carefully crafted proposal and then praising his son's useless two-page document. The audience heard the scornful laughter, "This is garbage," followed by, "Pure genius, Wateroo." Next, the screen switched to a series of high-definition photos, a paper bag visibly stuffed with cash being exchanged in the conference room hallway. Then, the detailed expense reports flashed up: the $218,000 United States dollars for the club, the late-night taxi rides, all rubber-stamped as legitimate client entertainment. Each slide included the date, the department, and the specific managers responsible for the approval. The evidence was damning, meticulously organized, and irrefutable. A collective gasp of shock ran through the room. A low, strangled sound escaped from someone near the front. Rick Dalton Sr. was completely ashen, his eyes wide and unfocused. Dalton Jr. had collapsed into his seat, his head bowed in utter defeat. Nathan Miller covered his face with his hands. Eleanor approached the microphone again, her voice resonating with sorrow, not anger. "I built this company to be a place where no worker was invisible, regardless of age, gender, or position." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the silent room. "I wanted a company where every working person was respected, but I failed. Somewhere along the way, we started to value clean metrics over clean ethics." She let the gravity of her words settle into the profound silence. The physical evidence had ceased, but the emotional pressure was suffocating, confirming to every employee that the foundation of their success was built on malice and lies. Eleanor continued, her focus turning toward the audience. "I have spent months arriving first and leaving last, checking to see if the roots of this company were salvageable." She paused, her voice hardening with conviction. "I now confirm, as long as people like you remain in power, this company has no future." Rick Dalton Sr. stammered a frantic defense, his face blotchy. "No, that recording is misleading. I have dedicated myself to this company for years." His son, Dalton Jr., remained silent, trembling, unable to offer any excuse. Eleanor slowly shifted her gaze to the junior employees who had silently laughed or turned away during Maya's humiliation. Many were now sweating, their posture shifting from defiance to shame. People make mistakes. However, those who refuse to face their mistakes have no future. She then turned toward her son, Kenneth Vance, who stood silently beside her. You only looked at the numbers, Kenneth. That is why you could not hear the voices from the floor, and you overlooked all the pain and effort. Kenneth lowered his head, gripping his fist tightly. His voice was thick with emotion as he replied, I did not have your vision, Mother. I truly believed I was honoring you, but I failed to look at the people. He bowed deeply to his mother, a gesture that transformed him from the detached CEO back into a humbled son. Eleanor then looked toward the back of the auditorium, where a young woman was sitting quietly, weeping. Maya Reed, please come forward. Maya, shocked, slowly rose, her legs unsteady. She walked toward the stage, her eyes fixed on Eleanor, her only anchor in the terrifying spotlight. Eleanor placed a gentle, reassuring hand on Maya's shoulder. This young woman's proposal was, in my judgment, top tier. It showed both insight and, critically, deep care for the actual workplace. Suddenly, Kenneth stepped forward to the microphone, his voice now resolute. Miss Maya Reed, effective immediately, we are offering you a full-time, salaried position with all benefits. Your strength is exactly what this company needs for reform. Tears streamed down Maya's face as she simply nodded repeatedly, finally given permission to exist and succeed. A moment later, a single clap erupted from the back of the room, followed quickly by another, then another, until the warm sound of a standing ovation engulfed the auditorium. The invisible cleaning woman had delivered justice, and the company was finally, publicly embracing the talent it had tried to crush. As the applause swelled, Maya looked around, utterly overwhelmed. Former colleagues who had ignored her were now nodding respectfully. Some even offered small, whispered apologies. I am sorry, I was wrong, one young employee admitted quietly. Maya's tears continued, but now they were tears of relief, and she managed a small, genuine smile. Eleanor watched her, giving a subtle nod of approval. The real work begins now, Eleanor murmured softly. Days later, a large new poster was installed in the main floor lobby of Vance Global. It featured a simple, powerful mission statement. See the person. Hear the voice, with the company logo discreetly below. Walking past it was Eleanor Vance. She was back in her familiar gray uniform, her white hair tied back, silently polishing the marble floor. She had relinquished the chairwoman title and the power suits once more, returning to her invisible role. Eleanor set aside her mop, putting away the used bucket. She glanced up one last time at the new poster. She did not need the title, she only needed to know that the people were safe. Now, where should I polish next? She mused to herself, the question carrying a quiet sense of duty and pride. Meanwhile, on a small bench behind the building, near a patch of landscaping, sat Maya Reed. She was wearing her new ID badge on a lanyard and was talking quietly into her phone. No, it is not a dream, Grandma, Maya chuckled softly, her voice lighter than it had been in months. I am a full-time employee now. You do not have to worry anymore. Her voice trembled slightly on the last word. Overcome with gratitude. Eleanor was nearby, quietly drying her mop. She averted her face but paused to listen to the conversation, her mouth softened into a gentle, knowing smile. The sound of Maya's relief, carried on the crisp Chicago air, confirmed that Eleanor's mission had succeeded, but she knew that watching over the soul of a corporation was a duty that truly never ended.